Hello and welcome to Zoom session number 3 of Acoustics. Had to get my name around the course. Hearing Instrument Sciences Acoustics, the third Zoom session of the course, every Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. Pacific Time, 11:30 a.m. Central Time. On the 16th, 2 weeks ago, we started Unit 1. We gave an overview of the course, and we began in Unit 1 talking about frequency, wavelength, speed of sound, all of that stuff. Last week, January 23, we continued on the same, and we talked really a lot more about the relationship between period and frequency. Hey, how are you? How you doing?
Good, how are you?
First, I was just talking to myself. All of a sudden, someone popped in. Good to know. You haven't missed a thing. All I did was gab a little bit about review of what we did in the past of weeks. So I was saying this is the last of the 3 Zoom sessions on Unit 1. Frequency, wavelength, and speed of sound. So last week we covered a lot about the relationship between period and frequency and wavelength and frequency, and we said we reviewed the 2 little formulas for that. P is 1 over F, F is 1 over P. In other words, frequency and period are inversely related. Same with frequency and wavelength, inversely related. Have you got any questions, Nicole? Any stuff that's vague or fuzzy to you?
Well, you know I had you last semester, so...
Good stuff. All right.
I think, biggest problem was formulas, and I think part of that was because I haven't done math in like 7 years.
Yeah. I'll tell you something. I failed 10th and 11th and 12th grade math all the way through high school. I was never the sharpest knife in the drawer when it came to math. But always know that this course covers no calculus, algebra, trigonometry, all that gobbledygook. We don't. It's simple 6th grade arithmetic. That's what we do.
And apparently I was not refreshed. So my advice would be, if you have not done this or not done math in a while, or you're not good with it, take math while you take 110.
Well, just realize, like we did in our little, here, I'll share a screen and I'll show you what I mean. And I'm kind of glad you're bringing that up. I'm going to share screen here and show you something in your notes that we looked at last week. And I'll just kind of make sure we kind of cover a bit of that this week. I'm scrolling up in my notes from the very start, acoustics, and we talked about waves and sound waves and all of that. And then I told you people not to freak out about the bottom third of page 1 at all. Don't. FNO, freak not out. And then we talked about the various ways to represent sound, a spectrum versus waveforms. And we talked about the 3 dimensions of sound, in other words, amplitude, frequency, and time or phase. And then here's where the formula began. Okay, and the period, time it takes to complete 1 wavelength, is inversely related to the frequency. In other words, the higher the frequency, the shorter the time it takes to complete 1 cycle of sound. And we also said the higher you go up in frequency, the shorter the physical length of the wave. So period refers to the time it takes to complete 1 cycle, 1 condensation, 1 rarefaction. And when you're talking wavelength, you're involving the speed of sound. So back up to frequency for just a second here. The little formulas, F is 1 over P, P is 1 over F. Just cycles of sound. Here you go. Period and frequency are inversely related. As frequency goes up, period gets shorter. So frequency is 1 divided by the period is 1 divided by the frequency. And here was an example. If a sound is 100 hertz, then its period is 1/100th of a second. Okay? And then we talked about the physical length of the ding-dong wave, and we got a second formula that popped in there. And we said that involves the speed of sound. And now think about the relationship, and this is what I mean by 6th grade fractions. Wavelength is speed of sound over the frequency. Frequency is speed of sound over the wavelength. Speed of sound equals frequency times wavelength. Well, 3 holes in the ground. Take a look at the right-hand side. For example, 5 is equal to 10 over 2. 2 is equal to 10 divided by 5. 10 is equal to 2 times 5. We are talking that kind of relationship. And so when you're looking here, I gave an example. And I said, well, for 100 hertz, how long is the wavelength? Well, it's the speed of sound divided by the frequency, as you saw here. Well, speed of sound is 343 meters per second. What's that divided by 100? Well, 3.43. Get the calculator. That's the length, 3.43 meters. Or if you want to do it in feet. In feet, the speed of sound is 1,130 feet per second. Divide that by 100, you got 11.3 feet. That's how long a 100 hertz sound wave is. Kind of weird, isn't it? Well,
Yeah.
so it shows you that as you go down in frequency, those wavelengths really get long.
Yeah.
And so we completed last week talking about that. And now this week we're going to the top of page 3, and we're talking the speed of sound. And we'll finish this ding-dong unit. Here we go. At room temperature, the speed of sound is 343 meters per second, or about 766 miles an hour. And how fast is that? A little faster than a Jet 747 airplane with a tailwind. A little faster than that, okay? Now look at the speed of light. I said that's an absolute blowaway. The speed of light is 100 million times faster. Yikes. So light travels at around 300 million kilometers per second. In miles, 186,000 miles per second. So light travels way faster than sound. But let's keep to sound. Speed of sound is 4 times faster in water. It's 14 times faster in steel. And I would remember that one. I'm going to put that puppy on a quiz. I just know it. And the next thing I'm going to put on a quiz is definitely this one here too. Speed of sound is influenced by the density and elasticity of the medium through which it travels. And in English, density means the mass. And in English, elasticity means the stiffness. The mass and stiffness. Mass and stiffness. Every object that transmits sound has mass and stiffness. This cup has mass and stiffness to it. The more dense something is, the more tightly packed the molecules are together. And the more dense something is, the slower sound goes through it. On the other hand, the more stiff something is, really stiff, the more stiff something is, the faster sound goes through it. So sound goes faster through steel than through air. And you might think, well, that doesn't make sense, Ted, because steel is a lot more dense than air. I can move my hand like this through air. If I hit my head, and that's not even steel, I mean, it stops, okay? So you'd think this is more dense. Yeah, I'm pretty dense when it comes to, okay, but steel is also more stiff than air. And the elasticity or stiffness of steel, the greater stiffness of steel far outweighs its greater mass or density. And that's why sound goes faster through steel than it does through air. And you'll remember from last year, I always said that saying, I'll keep my ear to the ground. Looking for a job this summer, I'll keep my ear to the ground. And that's what First Nations people would do listening for the buffalo. Listening on the ground, because the ground sound travels faster through the ground than it does through air. If you want to hear a train coming, put your head to the railroad track. You'll hear the sound traveling through steel faster than you will through air. Anyway, those were just certain things that we just talked about and lied about last week. All righty. Now we'll just go to the middle part of page 3. So this little section here explains exactly what I was talking about. Don't worry about the numbers. I don't care, couldn't care less about if you remember what these numbers are. Just remember, fluids and metals are more dense than air, so why does sound go faster through those? Because even though they are more dense, the greater elasticity or stiffness of steel is way far outweighs its greater density. All right, here. Recall, wavelength, speed, frequency, and speed of sound are all interrelated. Don't worry about the next sentence. Here's something to put a star by. The speed of sound is no relation to frequency. Never answer that high frequencies travel faster than lows. All frequencies travel the same speed through air. They travel the same speed through water, and they all travel the same through metal. Okay? We got another particular thing here, the Doppler effect. Two things, actually, the Doppler effect and the speed of sound. The Doppler effect occurs below the speed of sound. And when you think of the Doppler effect, think of an ambulance or a race car coming toward you. And it passes you. The frequency gets higher as it comes toward you, and it gets lower as it goes behind you. If you go to Indianapolis and look at the race cars there, okay, how come? That's because the speed of sound is constant through air, but when the ambulance or the car is coming toward you, you have the speed of sound plus the speed of the ambulance. And so the sound waves are getting squished. They're being pushed a little bit because the ambulance is coming toward you and the speed of sound is its own speed. So those waves get squeezed together a little bit, and guess what? Shorter wavelengths, higher frequency. And as the ambulance or race car passes you, and it's how come it gets lower? Because you've got the speed of sound coming back at you, but the car is going away from you. So you have the speed of sound minus the speed of the car. Hence the waves get a little bit longer, and you hear a lower frequency. All right, very good. Now let's talk about the speed of sound and the Mach, breaking the sonic boom, the sonic barrier. Here you go, this guy right here. Mach 1 is the speed of sound. Mach 2 is 2 times the speed of sound. Think about an airplane approaching the speed of sound. So the speed of sound, 343 meters per second, or 766 miles an hour, or whatever. Now the jet is approaching that speed. So now all the sound waves coming from the jet, well, the jet is catching up to those sound waves. And so it's squeezing the sound waves. And the sound can't get away from the jet. The jet is making its sound, but it's catching up to the speed of its sound. So it's squeezing those waves all into one big bump. And then it goes through that condensed mash of sound. And as soon as it goes through it, there's a big vacuum behind. A big, sound waves are condensation and rarefaction of molecules. And that's what one cycle is. The up is this condensation. The down is the rarefaction. Wow, 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 of molecules. So you squeezed all those molecules into a big bunch, and the plane punctures through it, and now that big bunch of molecules fills in the vacuum behind the plane, the rarefacted area, and that is a sonic boom. So if you look at it here on a good old PowerPoint slide, it's more fun looking at pictures anyhow. So you're looking at a plane breaking the sound barrier here, and as it pushes through. So here's your condensation area of molecules, and as soon as the plane breaks through, this fills in the vacuum of rarefacted area of no molecules of sound, and so you have the sonic boom. If you want to think of a sonic boom in a smaller way, I said last year, and I'll say it again, have you ever been in a great big, at a swimming pool, and you want to bug your friend, and so you take the towel that you've just washed yourself after a shower, and you take the towel and you do this and you snap a towel at somebody. Hurts, doesn't it? When you snap a towel and you hear the whoosh, that's the tip of the towel is breaking the sound barrier. When you think of a whip, whoosh, that is the snap, that the tip of the whip is breaking the sound barrier. And that's the sonic boom in a miniature way. So just thought I'd tell you some. Now we'll move on to the next topic because we've got to share screen and we'll get out of here. And we'll go to our Microsoft Word notes and look at the next field here, or the next area, sound field. So this area here, this is just verbally describing what I was talking about. And same here. Okay, just talking what I was talking about. Anyway, sound fields. A sound field, this is how we complete Unit 1. So we've covered frequency, wavelength, speed of sound, and now we're going to talk about the areas in which sound takes place. And that's called a sound field. Could be a living room, could be a classroom, could be a football field, could be standing on the road next to traffic. A sound field is a sound is in a space. Now, if you have a free field, that means there's nothing around for the sound to bounce off of. Nothing. Now, you almost never are going to get that. Where are you going to ever have that? Unless someone lifted you up in the air with an airplane or a helicopter, but there was total silence and you were way off the ground and there was nothing around you. I mean, only then do you have an area where sound can take place and it's not going to bounce off of anything. So a free field is quite rare. But when you think of, so there's no reverberation or echoes. Now, what's a reverberation and what's an echo? An echo is sound bouncing off of something, right? You're at Grand Canyon. Hello, hello, hello. The sound bounces off the wall, okay, of the opposite canyon wall. A reverberation is when you've got the echo that is shorter than 1/10 of a second. So if the reflection of sound takes less than 0.1 second, you're going to have a reverberation instead of what they call an echo. An echo is just a long reverberation. When you think of reverberation, think of a gymnasium, and you're bouncing a basketball in the gymnasium. And you hear bow, 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 bow. And you hear that wow, 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 wow. And that's reverberation, because the sound bouncing back at you took less than 1/10 of a second to bounce back. If the sound takes more than 1/10 of a second to bounce back, it's called an echo. That's the only difference. All right. Free fields hardly exist in reality. Almost everywhere sound occurs where there's something to bounce off. There's some reflection. Reflection occurs when the sound travels from one medium to another. In English, if the sound hits the wall. It's traveling through the air and it hits the wall. That's another medium. Okay, so it's bouncing off. Like a mirror increases light from a lamp. The light bounces off of the mirror. An actor enclosed in an enclosed theater sounds louder than a guy standing on an open football field. How come? Because in a closed theater, the sound is going to bounce off of the walls, whereas on a football field, there's less to bounce off of. An echo is when the time delay between the original and the reflected sound is less than 0.1 second, or less than 1/10 of a second. All right, reverberation is that, okay? An echo is when, I should say an echo is when the time delay between the original is more than 1/10 of a second. And a reverberation is when the time delay is less than 0.1 second. So, what does that mean in our field? Well, not so much in our field, except for people who deal with children in classrooms. You see, in classrooms, the sound from the teacher's voice is going to bounce off of the walls. And reverberation in hard-walled classrooms is really bad for children wearing hearing aids. In order to cut down on reverberation, it's smart to hang a carpet against the back wall of the classroom. So there's less reverberation of the teacher's voice bouncing off the hard, newly painted metal walls of the classroom. So if you have sound absorbing, then you've got less reverberation. And if you take tennis balls and put them on the bottom of your chairs, then when you drag the chairs, you don't hear the screeching of the chair legs either. So there's lots of ways to reduce reverberation and excess noise in a classroom. But basically, if you have a soundproof room, That's called an anechoic chamber. Anechoic chamber. I wonder if I have that. I think I do. Yeah, look at this. Anechoic room. An anechoic room is a soundproof room. It's meant to imitate a free field, actually. It's no echoes, no reverberation. All sound is absorbed by the thick walls in the room, meant to actually imitate a free field. They're very, very expensive. If you ever go into an anechoic room, you will hear your lunch digest. You will hear every swallow you do, every saliva, you'll hear every burp, fart, and whistle. I'm serious as a heart attack. Okay, it's going to be brutal. Almost nobody goes into an anechoic room. Those are soundproof rooms. When we do hearing testing, we do hearing testing in sound-treated rooms. That's the difference between having a waterproof watch and a watch that's water-resistant. A sound-treated room means normal hearing people can hear all the way down to 0 decibels. And speaking of decibels, that's what we're covering next week in Unit 2. We'll spend 2 weeks on the decibel. I always say the decibel from hell. All right? 2 weeks on the decibel, we spend 3 weeks on frequency, wavelength, and speed of sound and all that. And that's what we're finishing today. Look at this here. It says standing wave. That's not a wave that's standing up on 2 legs. That is a wave where the reflection off the wall is opposite in phase to the reflection of the sound that hit the wall. And if you want a little slight review of phase, I'll just go right up here and show you in a slide. Look at the bottom set here. These waves here are opposite in phase. These guys right here. So if the original sound is this top one, and the sound that bounced back is in opposite phase, you will have the sound of one hand clapping. Okay, basically silence. So standing waves you don't want those in a theater. Okay, so people who design theaters and listening environments are careful to avoid the places where standing waves that would occur. That creates a dead spot in a room, basically. So it means poor acoustics. Anyway, here it's called about sound-treated rooms. Hearing is often tested in semi-soundproofed rooms. Basically, most ambient room noise is kept down to a minimum so that normal hearing people can hear all the way down to 0. Good. Now let's finish and look at resonance. We need to now finish the first section on resonance. We will be returning to resonance in Unit 3 after the decibel. So Unit 2 is next week and the week after, the decibel. Unit 3 is called complex sounds. And there we will also look at resonance. But here's our first encounter with resonance. Have a read with me. It says, any object has its favorite vibrating frequency. So now when you think about a wine glass at Christmas, and you lick your finger and you rub the rim of the glass, and the whole thing, well, your outer ear has a weird shape too, because it too resonates. And it resonates with high frequencies of the consonants of speech. That's why your ear has this shape. If we didn't speak, we wouldn't need to hear the letters S, F, CH, T, K, all the high-pitched sounds that tell you what the word was. If we didn't speak, we probably would have dog or cat's ears. But because we speak, we need to hear speech. And the ear is literally married to speech. And so therefore, your outer ear has this helix, antihelix, concha, tragus, ear canal, all of that stuff so that it resonates like a wine glass at Christmas with high frequencies. And those high frequencies are the consonants of speech, not the vowels, the consonants. So this brings us to the topic of resonance. So now we'll talk about resonance. Your ear has a resonance, a wine glass has a resonance, okay? Any object that transmits sound has a favorite vibrating frequency. In other words, any object transmits some sounds better than other sounds. That's its resonant frequency. So resonance is the favorite vibrating frequency of an object, or you could call it my cup's favorite sounds. What sounds does my cup like? What sounds does my cup resonate with? And what sounds does it oppose? What sounds does it not like? Vibrations in any object, I'm highlighting this here, are affected by mass and stiffness. Just like we said earlier, density and elasticity, those are synonyms for mass and stiffness. Same thing. Mass is the amount of matter in an object. It's correlated with weight. Stiffness is the elasticity. Now, when you think of elasticity, do not, repeat, not think about elastic bands, okay? Elastic bands are not very stiff, okay? But when they talk about physics, they're talking elasticity is the resistance, the opposite of compliance, the opposite of not being, elasticity means stiff, okay? So every object has mass and stiffness. As mass increases, resonant frequency decreases. And as I've said every year, you're sitting in your apartment, the neighbors upstairs are playing loud music. What comes through the ceiling? The bass guitar and the drums. The low frequencies of sound resonate with the mass of the ceiling. That's why you hear them. You don't hear the cymbals very much. You mostly hear the lows. And same here, thicker guitar strings vibrate more slowly. So the thick strings on a guitar are the dong. A floor has a lot of mass. Only the bass is heard from the neighbor's apartment. As stiffness increases, resonant frequency increases. So, for example, hold your arm out straight and stiff. So if I was to grab, somebody was to grab my hand, and I'm holding my arm really stiff, and someone grabbed the tip of my fingers and moved them up slowly and down slowly and up slowly, but I'm holding my arm as stiff as I possibly can, the person will run into lots of resistance. But if I hold my arm really, really stiff and the person goes, no problem. Easy peasy Japanesey. If something is very stiff, like a spring out of a wall, a thick spring, if I try to push and pull on that spring slowly, I run into a lot of resistance. But if I put my feet square on the ground and go, easy, no problem. Stiffness vibrates with highs. Mass vibrates with lows. It's all about resonance. So you're looking here, tuning forks. Frequency of vibration is affected by the mass and stiffness properties of the little tines that stick up. If they're longer and thicker, they have more mass. If they're short, they have less mass, and they're really stiff. Hey, if you had a tuning fork stuck like this, which ones would you rather bend and try to bend together? I'll stop sharing. I'll just kind of use a tuning fork as an example. Say my fingers are a tuning fork. These are long tines, so it's a low frequency tuning fork. And I asked you to kind of bend these together. We could do it. But if my tuning forks are small, they have less mass, and I ask you to bend them together, it's a lot harder. Just so you can think about it. Less mass, more stiff. More mass, less stiff. All determines the resonant frequencies of an object. So, here we get to the fun part. Quarter wave resonators. Put a star by this puppy. It's on everything. Okay? Because quarter wave resonators are like my cup. A quarter wave resonator is a cylinder that's closed at one end. Now, I'm going to just mention to you, we've got a few of these guys. Okay, in our field, we have two. Okay, I'm holding my coffee cup here. It's got a bottom on it. It's a cylinder, and the top is open, but I better not tip it or I'll spill coffee on my computer keys. Okay, all objects that are cylinders closed at one end are called quarter wave resonators. They vibrate or they resonate with sound waves that are 4 times their length. So this cup would probably resonate with sound waves 4 times its length. Okay, your ear canal is a quarter wave resonator. Now, how long is your ear canal? Well, you guys are mostly in the States, so you guys call it an inch. Okay? A pinch for an inch. That's what you guys call it. In Canada, we call them centimeters. And a centimeter is the width of your fingernail. So if you take 2.5 centimeters and stick them together, you'll have about an inch. So the best way I can tell you is, I'll flip you the bird here. A centimeter is about an inch. I mean, about the size of my fingernail. Okay? All right, just remember, the Russian eagle is 5 times as strong as the American bird. Duh! All right, tell that one to Trump. Okay, here we go. Oh, you gotta like it. Coffee time. Okay, so quarter wave resonates. Another quarter wave resonator is your throat. From your voice, which is your larynx, which is closed, to the opening of my lips. That's a quarter wave resonator too. So how long is that puppy? Well, a few inches long. Okay, in metric, it's 17 centimeters long. 17 centimeters. So let's go back to the ear. So let's say the ear canal is 1 inch long. It's going to resonate with sound waves 4 inches long. Okay. Frequency is speed of sound over the wavelength. Speed of sound is 1,130 feet per second. Okay, now write this down. If you want to do it in feet, let's figure it out. Frequency is wavelength, or is speed of sound over wavelength, or wavelength is speed of sound over frequency. Either one, both of the formulas work. 5 is 10 divided by 2. 2 is 10 divided by 5. That's all I'm doing is just flipping crap around. So look on the bottom of page 2 in your notes if you want to see where I'm getting this from, okay? So 1,130 feet per second is the speed of sound. Okay, that's our constant. That's always on the top. That's the numerator, always. And then the bottom one is going to be the wavelength. Well, how long did we say it would be? 4 times the length of the ear canal, so 4 inches. Okay, but we've got feet on the top and inches on the bottom. That's apples and oranges, isn't it? I can't divide 1,130 by 4 inches because 1,130 is feet. So now I have to change my 4 inches into feet. What's 4 inches? What's 3 inches out of 12? A foot's 12 inches. So what's 4 inches? Well, 3 times, it's a third of a foot. 0.3. And what's a third really? 0.33. It's 0.33. Okay? Because 3 times 33 is 99. So you're almost at 100. So what's a third? 0.33 feet. All right, take 1,130. Get your calculator out. I'll get mine. Okay, 1,130 divided by 0.33 equals 3,424 hertz. That's the frequency. So my ear canal is going to naturally vibrate with a frequency that's 4,324. That's the frequency. All right, but your ear canal ain't a cup. My ear canal isn't this blue thing I'm holding up. Okay, my ear canal is made out of flesh and bone, so it's not this. So therefore, my ear canal is going to resonate. And I wonder, I may or may not have a picture of this in the PowerPoint. If I do, I do. If I don't, I don't. I will then show you. Let's just go to here. Let's escape. Go down to the bottom. wondering if I got it. I might. No, I don't, but that's okay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just draw this for you and share screen and show it to you. Your ear canal, because it is not made of steel or glass, it's going to, instead of resonating at 3,424 hertz, like I said, it's going to kind of do this. I'll bear with me, I'll be right there with you. And here, so your ear canal is basically going to do this. It's going to vibrate at around 1,500 hertz with a peak at 2,700 hertz, and then it's going to kind of fall down again at 4,000 hertz. In other words, that resonant frequency is going to spread out because your ear canal is made out of flesh and bone. Okay, there's your outer ear canal resonance. And when you look at that, that little bump there is adding about 20 decibels to the high frequency consonants of speech. There's your ear canal resonance, the shape of it. And what we did was we described it and explained it in terms of being a quarter wave resonator. So now we can look at this area. You ever breathed a balloon with helium in it? It's a riot. I do it all the time. Anytime I go past a fair or carnival or some crazy kid's birthday party, I almost always try to rip off a helium balloon. It's always a real drag, though, trying to untie the knot, because when you're trying to untie the knot, you often lose half the helium. At any rate, the quarter wave resonator business also explains why your voice gets higher when you breathe helium. And I worked it out here for you. Vocal tract, the length of your throat from your voice to your lips is 17 centimeters. The speed of sound, let's do it in metric. The speed of sound is 343 meters per second. So your throat is going to resonate best with sound waves 4 times 17. So it's going to resonate with sound waves that are 68 centimeters. Now, 68 centimeters is kind of a little bit more than half of a meter. A meter is a yard. So 0.68 of a yard is around 2 feet or something like that, I guess, but we're sticking to metric. So recall wavelength, frequency, and speed of sound formula from page 2 in your notes. Here we go. Frequency is speed of sound divided by the wavelength. Frequency is 343 meters per second divided by 0.68. Why did I do 0.68? Because I have to translate centimeters into meters, just like we did earlier when I translated inches into feet. We said 4 inches was 0.33 feet. Because when we're dividing fractions, we've got to keep meters to meters or feet to feet or inches to inches. You can't be dividing feet by inches. Similarly, you can't divide meters by centimeters. So 68 centimeters is 0.68 meters. So 343 divided by 0.68, guess what that gets you? Okay, that's going to get you about 500 hertz. So your throat is naturally going to resonate with 500 hertz. Okay, now breathe helium. Now you've breathed helium. Helium is less dense than air. Helium, that's why helium balloons float. As soon as you breathe helium into something, you put a helium balloon, it's going to go up. How come? Because its molecules are less dense than air. If they're the same, if I blow up a balloon in my hand, it's got oxygen in it. And it's the same as the air around the room. So the density is going to be similar in the balloon as it is in the air. Actually, it's going to be a little bit more dense because it's squeezed together by the balloon. And guess what? It's going to drop. But if you've got helium, it's going to go up because the molecules are less dense than in air. Okay, what did we say in our earlier discussion on this unit? The more dense something is, the faster sound, I should say the slower sound goes through it. So if the less dense something is, the faster sound goes through it. Okay, let's go back to helium. Helium is less dense than air. So sound's going to go faster through helium. And looky, in helium, Sound goes 927 meters per second, way faster than it does through air. So 927 meters per second divided by 0.68 is 1,362 hertz. And 1,362 hertz is higher up in frequency than 500. Therefore, your voice gets higher when you breathe helium. So now we've discussed two quarter wave resonators. One's the ear and one's speech. Okay? Both of them are quarter wave resonators. Let's take this session home. Now we'll look at the word called impedance. We've talked about resonance. Let's talk about impedance. And to that, I will just say a frown is an upside down smile. A smile is an upside down frown. Impedance is the flip side of resonance. Okay, what doesn't go through an object is stopped by the object. You're going to a bar. There's a bouncer at the door. The bouncer is going to stop some people from getting through, and he's going to let others go through. If you're loud and rowdy and you throw beer in his face, he's not going to let you go through. He's going to impede you. And he's going to resonate with the ladies. He's going to say, hey, ladies, you go on in. These guys out here are bad. I'm not letting them through. Okay? So he's resonating with the women, and he's impeding the macho bad guys. Similar. So when you think of resonance, think of the opposite of impedance. Impedance is resonance upside down. Resonance is impedance upside down. Okay? So let's define impedance, because that way we can define resonance. Impedance is made of three little cowboys. The one cowboy is opposition due to mass. Now, when you think opposition, what does mass resonate? Lows. So what does mass oppose? Highs. Now look at stiffness. Stiffness, what does it resonate with? High frequencies. So what does it oppose? Low frequencies. Good. So opposition due to mass and opposition due to stiffness are very, very, very frequency dependent. Okay? They really, but then there's this third little cowboy, the third guy. Okay? He is called resistance. And any object that transmits sound, be it my ear, be it my cup, be it whatever, any object that transmits sound also provides resistance to sound. And resistance you can think of like simple friction. Okay, sliding something on the floor, sliding a heavy box on the floor, friction. And so you have to push really hard to slide the heavy box on the floor because you got a lot of friction. If the box had wheels underneath, you don't have as much friction. But too bad, you don't. So you got a lot of friction. So in any object, the friction is equal for all frequencies. So opposition due to mass will be very dependent on the object. Opposition due to stiffness will depend on the object. And in that object, you will also have resistance. But resistance to the passage of sound in any object is equal for all frequencies. Put a star by that puppy. You know I'm going to ask. Okay, let's read what it says in our notes, and you'll see exactly what I was talking about here. So here you go. Read with me from the bottom of here at page 3 here, or whatever. Impedance equals resistance plus opposition. Simple resistance, like friction or ohms in an electrical current, it's independent from frequency. In any object, changing the frequency of the sound does not have any effect on the resistance. Okay, next one. You have opposition due to mass and opposition due to stiffness. And this is called reactance. Opposition due to sound, due to mass or stiffness properties in an object. So mass resonates with lows, it impedes highs or opposes highs. Stiffness resonates with highs, it opposes lows. So in any particular object, the opposition to the passage of sound is very different for very different frequencies of sound. Changing the frequency of the sound going through the object definitely changes the amount of opposition. So, sound gets softer as it moves through any medium. In air, water, and metal, all these things impede the passage of sound. Otherwise, sound would go on forever. I mean, when I'm talking, you'd hear me at your house if sound never stopped, okay? But I'm in Canada. The sound is probably going to stop of my voice by the time it hits the street, okay? So sound always dissipates and goes because it's running into resistance, impedance, obviously. Otherwise, it would go on forever. Air, water, metal, all these things impede the passage of sound. Sound through air bounces off of water, doesn't it? I mean, if you're swimming under a swimming pool and I talk to you from the edge of the pool, you're not going to hear me because my voice is going to bounce off the water. Okay, it's impedance. It's offering resistance and opposition. Impedance is the opposite of resonance. An object's favorite vibrating frequency is where the least impedance to the passage of the sound is. If an object offers impedance to a certain sound, it will not resonate with that sound. Resonance occurs in any sound transmission system when the opposition due to mass is equal to the opposition due to stiffness. Now, that picture is shown here in your text. So if you take a read of your good old Lassen Woodford, you'll see that here as well. I highly recommend reading the assigned readings after this Zoom session, but I highly recommend people listen to these Zoom sessions because when you don't, you're flying rudderlessly and you're wondering what the heck to look at and what to read. And this is an online distance ed program, and the Zoom sessions are the real steady, what do you call it, constant in this in each course that tells you really what you need to look at in each course so that you can prepare better for your quizzes and midterms. So I always say the Zoom sessions are the meat and potatoes of what's in each course. And your readings are the extras. Your readings are the dessert. Your readings are the lettuce and the other stuff, okay? Anyway, that doesn't say much if someone's a vegetarian, but you know what I mean. Anyway, get it? Got it? Real good that you joined, Nicole. Glad you did. But the others, of course, this is always recorded. And so here's hoping the others in the class will tune into this Zoom session by accessing it as a recording. And if you're listening to it, you knew already how to do that. But to access Zoom sessions, you go into Canvas, hit 110 in the dashboard. Then once you're there, click on Coursework, and you'll see 8 units below. This Zoom session is the last of 3 in Unit 1. So click on Unit 1, and you'll scroll down, and you'll see 2 Zoom sessions already done. If you haven't watched those, by all means do, because like this one, I just cram them with information, but we talk straight out of the notes. And we talk straight out of the notes that you yourselves use. I always make sure that my notes are not any different from your notes. But at any rate, cool, got it, done, been there, got the t-shirt. We'll see you when we look at you. All right, until then, live long and prosper.
I had one question for you.
Good stuff. What is it?
I got a text from the daycare, so I didn't hear the last thing you wanted us to put a star by.
Ah, let me see what that was. I'll pull this up and see if I can remember what that was. Ah.
No.
Let's see if I can guess what the heck that was. I believe. Let's see. Simple reason. I think it was this whole. I think it was this. Here, I know what it was. Impedance is the flip side of resistance, and impedance has 3 components. That's what it was. So it's the 3 cowboys. Okay, opposition due to mass, opposition due to stiffness. Those are called together reactants. That's what I'm graying out right here. Okay, and then those 2 are called reactants, and the third one is simple resistance, which is simple friction. So resistance plus reactance equals impedance, and that's what it says here. Resistance plus opposition or reactance equals impedance. Cool? All right, that's what that was. All right, have a good week. Talk to you later then.
All
I'll
right.
stop sharing here and see if I can turn myself off. Yeah, there's got to be a stop. Stop.